everyone. Welcome to the Breaking Moment podcast. My name is Regine Bowe, and I am a social worker who wants to give you hope, encourage you, and help you feel less alone in your healing journey. This podcast is dedicated to helping you heal, learn, and grow to become a better version of yourself. Through education and personal experience, I will discuss topics around mental health and spirituality. So, let's get started on today's episode. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Breaking Moment podcast. I'm your host, Regine Bowe, and happy May. I can't believe it's May. Like, this is wild, but I hope that your May is starting off well. I'm recording this episode on the 2nd, so by the time you listen, you'll be maybe a couple days in. But no, welcome. If you are new, welcome. If you've been rocking with us for 21 episodes now, welcome back. I meant to share this last episode. I didn't even realize, but it's been 20 episodes. Like, that is wild. I don't even know. Like, I'm just so shocked. I'm so happy and proud. Thank you guys for just listening, whether you just started or not. Like, it's always a pleasure and an honor to do this. I love this. I love talking about things that people may be going through, that I'm going through, in hopes that it helps you feel less alone, that it helps you feel encouraged, that it helps you find the resources and things to uplift you, to help you, whatever the case may be. Whether you're referring it for a friend that's in a time that they need to listen to the Breaking Moment because they're having their own. But I meant to say this last episode, but this is episode 21, and this is just awesome. But yes, I hope that you're doing well, and I can't wait to finish our part 2 of how to heal anxiety, tools to help us heal anxiety. I'm very excited about this episode as someone who recently found out that she has anxiety, but has probably been struggling with it for a long time. I'm super excited to finally, talk about these things that have been affecting me and that I found helpful, that I found interesting, that I hope that helps you guys in any way possible. Recently it's interesting how some topics that you talk about end up coming up in real life. Obviously, I struggle with anxiety, but the last probably week or two ish has been increased. Like, I feel like my anxiety has been higher recently. Could be a test from God to, I'm trying to encourage you guys to utilize these tools. I got to utilize my tools, which I have been. I'm very proud. Very, very proud of myself and my growth. But it just goes to show you that no matter where you are in the journey, whether you're a week into healing your anxiety, whether you've just found out, whether you're 3 years in, whether you're 10 years in, it's continuous. And I kind of wanted to talk about this a little bit before we got started. I actually debated if I wanted to name it tools to manage anxiety or tools to heal anxiety, because at first I thought healing was, this is, before I really understood it and dove deep into it. And maybe you thought the same thing. I thought healing was getting rid of. So I was like, I don't want to tell them to heal it and then they think it's going to go away, but that's my interpretation of what I thought healing was, right? That might not be what you think. And then I realized, I was thinking about it, I was praying about it, but also there's this book that I'm going to talk about later where he talks about, he thinks he healed his anxiety, and it doesn't mean it goes away. It just means that now it's healed to a point where you know what to do. It's not like the first time you experienced it where, oh my gosh, you were in such a panic. You thought you were losing your mind. You thought you were going crazy. You didn't know what to do. You were in crisis mode, da 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 da. But now it's like, okay, yeah, it's there. It's probably going to be there the rest of your life. It's possible, I'm not one to name things like, oh, you're going to live with it forever, but it's possible that it's going to be something that affects you for the rest of your life, whether it's a 10 or 1%, whatever, but I think it's always going to be there. And it's about what we do to help us to heal and get to the point where we can live with it. And I can say with my anxiety increasing, it's just some things that I realized that it's the change for me, it's the uncertainty. And recently I made a big girl purchase that I'm super proud about, but with that comes uncertainty of, you know, I don't know, like uncertainty of if I'll have that thing for a while, if I'll be consistent with the payments, if the same thing will happen last time happened. Like it's just um opening a wound, kind of like, oh, this is different, this is uncertain, this is dangerous, but I have to sit with myself and say, no, this is, we're okay, we're safe, this is, we're all right. I know it's makes us nervous, but we're going to keep moving forward because we have the tools to get through this moment. So I'm kind of on my own, right now. My anxiety has been heightened, and I wanted to record this like 2 days ago, but it's just been so bad. But I'm feeling a lot better today. And that just goes to show you that every day is different. Healing is a lifelong journey, but it's also not linear. So, where my anxiety has been better months ago, the last couple weeks have been tough. But I'm here, and we're human, and we're gonna get through it together. Okay. So I want to kind of do a little recap of last episode, and then we're going to jump right into today's episode. So last episode, we talked about what anxiety is. Oh, and if you didn't hear last episode, I would literally stop. I know it's getting good. I know you want to know more, but I would stop and listen to the first one because the first one really does tie into the second one. I would stop right now. I think we're at 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Stop, go listen, and then come back. But yes, so last episode we talked about what anxiety is. According to www.mind.org.uk, anxiety is what we feel when we are worried, tense, or afraid, particularly about things that are about to happen or which we think could happen in the future. So, pretty much, it's about things in the future. You could be in the present moment and you're completely safe, but if you're so worried about something that has happened in the past that you're anticipating might happen in the future, that can cause your anxiety to spike. We also talked about how anxiety is a normal human response that we feel when we're under threat. And it can be experienced through our thoughts, our feelings, or physical sensations. And I went in depth about kind of like our normal anxiety, where we're in the wilderness, back in the day when we were living in survival mode in the wilderness, and there's a bear or a lion or whatever animal, and we have to run. Our sympathetic nervous system is heightened, and we are in fight, flight, or freeze, and we got to make a decision whether we're fighting the bear, we're fleeing from the bear, or we just freeze just because we don't know what to do. So we talked about the kind of the normal human response of anxiety, and then we talked about why some of us experience anxiety in different ways, and that is more because of trauma, because we experience trauma at some point, and that caused us to have a trauma response, which is the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, which I went in depth in last episode. We also talked about how anxiety affects nearly 30% of adults at some point in their lives, and anxiety is one of the more common mental health disorders. So you are not alone, even though it feels, let me tell you, some days it just feels unbearable that I'm the only person in the world with it, and I just want to cry and I just want to scream because depending on how heightened the panic is, you just want to scream because everything in your body is telling you you're in threat and you're not. It is so frustrating, but you are not alone. We also talked about kind of like what is anxiety, what it is, but also what's happening in our body. We talked about the difference between the sympathetic nervous system. We talked about the autonomic nervous system and how it's broken up into sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic nervous system is what it triggers the fight flight response. It triggers the trauma response. It increases that adrenaline, that cortisol level, so that we have the energy to do what we need to do. Um, we also talked about we talked about the sympathetic, and then we also talked about the parasympathetic, which is our rest and digest, and that is what kind of acts as the brake, and it is the response that calms the body down after danger has passed. So our parasympathetic is our best friend. And our sympathetic isn't really our enemy. It just is confused, and we just have to, redirect it. It can be our friend, if a bear is really coming at us, and it's like, yo, you need to run. Like, hey, it's our friend then, but it's, gets a little complicated when It's telling you to run when your mom walks in the door because you have trauma with your mom, for example, or if you have trauma with your dad, for example, or if you have trauma with relationships, for example. Um, we talked about that. We also talked about, I went in depth about what the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn is. And I talked about what's happening exactly in the brain and, what we talked about how the prefrontal cortex, which is our executive functioning, how that's shut off. So even though deep down this is not a threat, your prefrontal cortex can't really, it's not activated, it's shut down because your amygdala, which contributes to the emotional processing, interprets the images and sounds when we perceive a danger, and it signals a distress signal to the hypothalamus, which then starts this whole process because it's the command center and it controls the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic meaning it's automatic. Automatic. And it controls the involuntary movements like our breathing and blood pressure. That's why when we're in that threatened state, we feel our heart rate going. Our breathing starts getting shallow, our blood pressure increases, and things like that. So, there's a little recap. Now we're going to get started on today. So, I want to get started on our tools. I have so many, and I hope one of them helps you. And this is the thing, as I've been on this journey, I realized that everything doesn't work for everyone. So I can give you all this list and none of them work for you that well or at all. It's about you doing the self-discovery, because I've tried things that other people said work for them and it didn't. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm defected, or like, oh my gosh, like my anxiety's got to be worse than theirs, or oh my gosh, maybe it's something else besides anxiety. I just spiraled. But the truth is, everybody's different. Everybody's trauma is different. So whatever tools help you is going to be different. But I want to give you many tools so that so that you have something to work with. So the first one I'm going to start with, of course, is breathing. And let me just tell you, when I heard about this one, you might be saying the same thing, like, really, sis, breathing, really? But I'm going to tell you, it really helps. It helps because, like I said, when the hypothalamus activates the autonomic nervous system, which controls the involuntary things, and it activates that sympathetic, and your heart is racing and you're in a panic mode, the best way to show your body that you're not in a threat is to calm it down. And the best way to do that is breathing, because breathing activates our parasympathetic nervous system and, the rest and digest, and it helps to stimulate relaxation. It helps to stimulate us into a relaxed state. So, when we take in more oxygen, it slows our heart rate down, right? It just kind of slows the moment. Because right now we're like, oh my gosh, something's wrong. But it's like, nobody, we're just breathing. It's okay. And I actually experienced this like last night. I just woke up and, like I said, I had a really anxious moment, a really anxious day the day before about everything, the change that has happened. And one thing that fuels anxiety is just fearing it, keep thinking about it, keep thinking it's going to happen again. So here I am anticipating that I'm going to have another anxious day, which is super unfair to myself, by the way. But I woke up and instantly I was just in like an anxiety attack. Like my heart was racing. I kind of froze a little bit. Like it just was a lot to take in. And all I could think about is breathe. Breathe, Regine. I did my breathing. And I didn't really write down because there's different types of breathing. Some people do 4 in. Some people do 6 out. Some people do 4 in, 4 out. If you do the research, there is a specific breath that they recommend, and I want to say it's like 4 in. You hold it for a certain amount, and then you let it out for longer. So I can't remember what it is, but I usually do 4 in, 6 out. Or sometimes I'll do the 4 in and then maybe I'll hold it for like another 4 or 6 and then I'll be out for 8. But the thing is, I usually try to do the breaths. I'll do a short amount of breaths in and longer breaths out. And I think that's the most important part. But anyway, I woke up in that panic and I just remember breathe. And even though it sounds stupid because my body is like, oh my God, there's a threat. Mind you, I'm in my bed. I'm safe. I'm okay. But that's just the threat. You had that anxious moment yesterday. You had that, it's going to happen again today. You got to be prepared. And it's like, no, it's 2 a.m. Go to bed. But guess what? I had to get myself there. So I did my breathing. And I have these little stress gummies that I have. I don't remember the brand. It's from the store at Walmart, but they're really good calming gummies that I use sometimes. I took those. I did my breathing, and I kid you not, it's just amazing how it really helps. So even though my mind was still wandering about tomorrow and what if, my body actually felt relaxed. Like I could just feel the difference. Like my body was just like, oh, I'm calm, but my mind was fueling it. And I'm gonna go in depth about that later, but breathing really does regulate your body, and once your body's calm, you can deal with it, because then the rest is just thoughts. And but yeah, I was able to calm myself down, and this process 2 3 years ago would have taken me all night. I probably wouldn't have went back to sleep because I allowed the worry to control me, meaning like I just kept feeding into it. So then I wanted to stay awake to be prepared for what, right? Because there's no threat, but my mind thinks it is. Remember, the amygdala doesn't see the difference. It doesn't see the difference in the time that happened yesterday, or that happened 5 years ago, and you're bringing it back when you're 25, or that happened 10 years ago and you're bringing it back to now. It doesn't see the time difference. It just sees it as a threat, and it's just protecting you. So I did my breathing. I took my calming gummy. I gave myself some compassion. I had my pillow kind of hugging myself, and I felt relaxed. And this process took 10 minutes when 3 years ago it would have taken, I couldn't even tell you. It would have probably consumed my night, went into my morning. I probably wouldn't have went back to sleep, or I probably would have for an hour, then woke up in another panic attack. Long story short, took 10 minutes, went back to sleep, woke up, was fine. Um, Still had it, but it wasn't as heavy. The long story is like that's progress, and that's what we want to get to. Remember, healing isn't about getting rid of it. It's about learning to manage it in a way that it's about learning to live with it, pretty much, right? So, boom. That's just an example that actually happened. So, breathing is important. Do your research on what breathing styles help you. There's box breathing, belly breathing. There's so many. There's ocean breathing. There is so many different types. So, that's about you figuring out what you like. But I'm just here to tell you that breathing matters. It sounds stupid when you're in it, but it does help you get out of it. It helps you to sit in that moment. Mindfulness, mindfulness, mindfulness. I think I talked about this probably every episode. Um, it's just important to just be mindful because your mind and your body are in such a panic that mind being it's about being in the present moment, grounding yourself, and just realizing that even though it feels like it's the end of the world, because sometimes it does feel that way, it's not. It feels that way because something happened to you at one point that resembles this feeling that you're feeling now, and you're anticipating it, and you're thinking it's going to happen again, and you're not trusting it. But it's about just being mindful that, okay, I feel that, but I'm not going to allow it to consume me, right? And I'm going to give us an example of a mindfulness technique. For example, there's the grounding technique, which I've given, I think, before, and it's the 5 4 3 2 1. 5 things you see, 4 things you touch, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, 1 thing you taste. And that just helps you so that when you're in that panic mode, you're kind of grounding yourself to the moment. Like, okay, it allows you to be in the moment without it overwhelming you, over consuming you. Because when you're in that moment, it's not easy. And I don't even think I shared this last time, but another symptom that I can think of off the top of my head is like the fear of going crazy. And it sounds silly, but I looked it up, and it's a thing that because you're in such a panic mode, you feel like you're losing your mind in a way. Like you feel like something bad's going to happen, that you need to do something that, especially if you've never felt anxiety or an anxiety attack before, and it's super scary. You feel like you're losing your mind because it's like you feel this in your heart's racing, your breathing's shallow, and it's just like, oh my god, what is this feeling? And then of course you're going to fear it if you had no idea why it's happening. So if you feel like you are going crazy in those moments, you're not alone. I actually feel those sometimes. Um, but grounding myself that, okay, I feel this, I feel the alarm, I feel the anxiety, but okay, I see the light in my room. Well, as you're breathing, right? I see my microphone as I'm speaking. I see my computer. I see my phone case. I see the TV on. I hear myself talking. I hear myself breathing. So it's it helps you to not be consumed by that feeling, because it's a lot, it's scary. But that's an example. Obviously there's different mindfulness techniques you can use, but I really recommend utilizing mindfulness, and this is something that I do every day because I experience anxiety every day in different ways, but it all feels the same. It all feels like it hurts. It all feels overwhelming, and all I can do is just ground myself in the present moment. Sometimes I try to allow myself. I've been doing this lately, which I really like. Is I try to pick at least one meal a day where I just am not focused on anything. I'm not focused on checking work emails. I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not talking with anyone. I'm not watching TV, but I'm just sitting and eating my meal, being mindful what I'm eating. The rest of the world is going to be the rest of the world. But I just try to give myself that 10, 15, whatever, even if it's 5 minutes of just enjoying my food and actually, tasting the food and being present with what's around me. It just gives me time to kind of regroup, because it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with on top of everything else, because even though we struggle with anxiety, the world doesn't stop. The bills don't stop. The bills still need to be paid. The dogs still need attention. The kids still need attention and things and love and food. Your spouses still need things. The world still is is revolving. So it's okay to just take a minute just to give yourself a break, or just to sit with that anxiety, even though it hurts, and just say, I'm okay. I'm okay. Sometimes you just have to reassure yourself, I'm okay. Okay. Sensations is a big one too. Sometimes, like if I'm really anxious, drinking some water, drinking some cold water, maybe putting something cold in your face. Some people do ice baths, cold showers, putting something cold on your wrist, something like that. And it's because it kind of the sensations ground you. It's all about grounding yourself, because we get so consumed in that anxious moment that we believe that we're in that moment, but we're not, and we are safe, and we just have to ground ourselves. And part of that is the sensation. So that's the grounding techniques, like I said, or maybe you don't want to do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but you just want to drink some cold water, and that helps bring you back. Or scents are good too, like some people have the aromatherapy or lavender. My one best friend, she bought me these oils for Christmas one year, and I forgot about them. And recently, when my anxiety I thought it has gotten worse, I've been trying to carry my little oils with me so that I can bring myself back by, putting the oil on my wrist or on my neck or something, so I can smell the scent, so that it can constantly bring me back to the present moment. So far we talked about breathing, mindfulness, sensations, therapy. You might not need it, but if you're saying, I might need it, you probably do. And it's not a bad thing. Remember, I'm here to say therapy's not bad, because I was there. I was there where I thought it was the worst thing that could happen. I thought that I failed at life because I needed a therapist. I couldn't do it on my own. But we all need somebody. We all can't be Superwoman, Superman. We need someone. And life is life. Like, we all have been impacted by something, whether it was a pandemic, whether it's the way you grew up, whether it's work environment, whether it's domestic violence. We all have been through things that have caused us to be fearful, be uncertain, be anxious, be depressed, be these things that we don't know why, we don't know how to get through it. And going to therapy, it will help you. It helped me to see that I'm not crazy, because I'll tell you straight up, when it happened, I just knew that something was going on. I was scared. I was crying. I was fearful. I thought I was losing my mind. I thought life was coming to an end because I somehow went crazy, because I never experienced it this bad before. Why is it happening now? But then I realized that, like, I'm experiencing this. I'm aware of it now, but I think it's always been there. And I figured out why I am the way I am. And I figured out how I can deal with it, how I can talk about it, what skills I can use. I figured out that just because I struggle with anxiety doesn't get to control me. I still am Regine, no matter what I go through. And that speaks volumes by itself, because when you get a label about something, whether you struggle with depression, you will say, I'm depressed. You would say, I am anxiety. You're not anxiety. You're not depression. You struggle with it. There's a difference. We got to separate it. And, a lot of, obviously with therapy, most of it's person centered. And we want you to realize that, like, you're not the thing. You struggle with the thing. So because you struggle with it, You can control how you respond to it. It doesn't get to you up every night and determine your day and determine your life. No, you can utilize things to help you deal with it because it's going to be there and that's okay. But you're going to learn the right things to you're able to heal and able to learn to live with it. And that's the biggest difference. I want you to understand that. And therapy helped me to understand that. Therapy, of course, God, of course, like my pastor, you know, and you might want therapy and mentally, but you might want there's other types of therapy. There's not just talk therapy. There's a whole bunch of different things that you can utilize. Therapies where they focus on the body. There's art therapy. There's so many different types that you can find that help you. But please talk to someone. It takes strength to say I need help instead of trying to do it on your own. Trust me, I've been there. I've done that. It takes strength to say I can't do this on my own. I need support. I need to talk to someone. It helps you. It shows you that you care about yourself because why make yourself suffer anymore? Society will say, "Oh, you don't need to go to therapy," or they'll say that you're weak for crying and need it, but that's not the truth. You're strong because you want to get help. You're strong because you want to be a better you, okay? So, therapy, tapping. And I don't mean tap dancing, but hey, if that helps you, cool. So, recently, well, kind of more in the middle of this journey, I saw this on Instagram and then I kind of looked into it, but there's this tapping that people do, and it's just like tapping your forehead, tapping your chest, tapping wherever on your body, and it's just another way to ground yourself. It's a sensation. You're feeling the tapping, so it's helping you get out of your head. That might not work for you. I've done it. I did it I feel like I did it at the beginning and it helped, and sometimes it helps me now, but it's not the first thing I go to when I am in a when I'm dealing with my anxiety and I'm in that anxiety attack and stuff. But tapping might help you. It might help you to ground yourself by tapping your forehead, your cheeks, your nose, your chin, your neck, your shoulders, your chest. Journaling. Sometimes you just need to write it out. And it helps because you can always go back to it. So, especially when you feel better and you look back at like, whoa, like when I see what I wrote 3 years ago when I was struggling, it was like the end of the world. And now I'm like, okay, I'm a lot better than I used to be. And I think that's all it is. It's about seeing the little progress. No, I'm not perfect, but I'm better than I was 3 years ago. When I first when I first found out I had anxiety, I had no idea what it was. It just consumed me. I just cried. I needed constant validation that I was okay, that I wasn't crazy, that I still had a life to live despite knowing that I struggle with this thing. So here I am now. Like I'm able to see that though because I wrote about it. And sometimes journaling just helps you to activate. I've seen a therapist say this before, and she said that journaling can help activate that executive, the prefrontal cortex, that executive functioning because you're writing about it. It's getting you out of your head because you're writing it out. You're seeing what you're writing, or reading what you're writing, instead of just sitting there and allowing it to consume you. So journaling, I find being in nature helps me because sometimes when I do my grounding techniques at home, it helps, but sometimes being in nature helps because maybe you'll feel the wind in your face, maybe you'll feel the sunshine on your face, and it just maybe that's just me. I'm just a big nature person. I love being in nature. It just brings joy to me, hearing the birds, hearing different things like that. So, being in nature could be a tool that helps you get out of your head, helps you get out of that anxious moment. Talking to someone you trust can be good too because guess what? They might be going through what you're going through, or they might have went through it, or it's just sometimes knowing that you're not alone, or just knowing that someone's there to listen when you're going through a rough time can be healing, can be helpful, can be encouraging. Body scans. Just scanning your body, seeing, how am I feeling today? Even if you don't feel anxious, right? But you struggle with anxiety. Just scan your body like, I'm feeling all right, but I do feel like a little tense in my throat. Like, okay, let me just ground myself, or let me just write about it real quick. Like maybe that'll help so it doesn't become escalated, so it doesn't get worse, whatever. Just scanning your body, seeing where you feel this. I think a lot of healing anxiety is going to be discovery, and it's going to be uncomfortable. That's why I said, if you need a therapist, because some days it was too much to sit with it on my own, but it was like taking baby steps. Like, okay, I sat with it by myself for a minute. Now I can sit with it for a while, but I had to get there. And sometimes sitting with it meant talking to a therapist while someone was present so it wouldn't feel overwhelming. So scanning your body, seeing where you feel your anxiety. Like, it sounds silly, but everyone feels it different places. Some people might feel it in their throat, some people might feel it in their chest. Some people might feel it in their stomach. Some people might get nauseous. Like, where do you feel it? So that you are aware that when it happens, you know what to do. It's almost like, okay, I feel it in my chest. Let me get to my tools instead of ignoring it so that it doesn't become a 10. We don't want it, we can't control everything. Like, there's going to be days where it's a 10, but if we feel it right now at 4 in the morning and it's there, we could say, oh, let me do my tools real quick so we don't get it to a 10. So scan your body, do some self-discovery of what you feel, where you feel it, what's it feel like. um and write it down so that you can come back to it. Like, okay, I'm not going crazy. This is just anxiety. This is just anxiety trying to protect me. Let me tell him what's up. It's okay, I'm good. And do the things that help you to regulate yourself and calm yourself down. And the last thing, and I probably should have started with this, but there's this book. There's this book by Dr. Russell Kennedy, called Anxiety RX. And I talked about this, I think, in the episode where I talked about healing the inner child. But I want to go a little depth about it today. Um, awesome book. Like, I mean, such a great resource for me. And like I said, I knew nothing about anxiety and people that struggle with it, but on social media, I followed this one person who followed this next person and led me to him and his page. He has a podcast. He's great. And his book is so helpful because he talks about anxiety as alarm. He talks about anxiety as the thoughts that fuel your alarm. So you feel the alarm in your body. That's why I talk about the body scan. You usually feel it in your body, and because you feel it in your body, your mind is going to worry you and fuel you with worries about what it could be. Oh my gosh, it's because I got a new job. It's because I got in a relationship. It's because I got something new. I got the new house. I got the new car. I got this. I got that. And pretty much he describes it as the anxiety will in your mind fuels your alarm. And he talks about anxiety in the book. He talks about alarm as separation from your younger self. So we experience these things because we are separated from our younger self. And it's like, I never thought of it that way, because it is true. Like, some of the things I struggle with is because I separated from myself, maybe to fit in, or because I was rejected. So because I don't want to feel rejected again, I'm going to do everything to people please. And when you people please, you are lacking, you are putting others' needs above your own. So of course I'm separated from myself. So anytime I feel this feeling, it's just he looks at it as your inner child. Like, your inner child is like, I'm scared. Your inner child is like, oh my gosh, what if this happens like last time? It's fearful. And I like how he puts it, because it helps me to separate it. And it helps me to look at it not as a negative, but as a child just scared. And then I can sit with that feeling and say, oh my goodness, it's just my younger self scared of something happening again that happened in the past. But all I can do is sit with her, or you could sit with him and say, it's going to be okay. And we're going to breathe through this, and we're going to ground ourselves through this. But understanding that concept has helped me, because it helps me to see it not as this evil thing that's just there to just be there, but as my inner child scared of the same thing happening, scared of losing me again, scared of being rejected, scared of being this. And so yeah, he looks at it as that. He encourages us to sit with it. He uses this thing called the ABCs, which is awareness, body and breath, compassion, and connection. So become aware of it, by doing those body scans, or sitting with yourself for a minute and saying, ooh, I actually feel anxious. Because think about it. If we're going 1,000 miles a minute, how can we know if we're anxious or not? And this is something that I realized that, like, I think I felt this feeling before, because realizing what caused it, it made me track it back to a time when I was younger. And it's like, wait, so I've always been fearful of it, but I went 1,000,000 miles a minute so I wouldn't feel it. And that's something that you could be doing. You could be you could be in flight mode, where you're working it away. You're working yourself so much, and you're over involving yourself in things so you don't feel it, right? But how can you heal it? And he says you can't heal it if you don't feel it. You're just avoiding it. And that inner child is just screaming for just connection, right? And when he put it like that, I'm like, wow. So I've had to become aware of it. It hurts. I hate it, but I had to become aware of it. And then breath and body. So he talks about breath and he talks about your body putting your hand. He talks about putting your hand on that feeling. So if it's in your chest, putting your hand on it as you're breathing. And then the next one is compassion. Saying nice things to that little girl who's scared. You know what? I know that you're triggered because the old you was rejected, but we're not there anymore. We're going to do this together. We're not there anymore. I know you got your hopes up before and something was taken away from you or you couldn't handle it, but we're not there anymore. Let's sit with this feeling. I'm with you. And saying those things that that little girl or little boy needed. And it helps. It really, really helps because the more I see that little girl, I realize that she's just scared. She's just scared of taking that leap because she did before. And guess what? It ended in rejection or it ended in disappointment. Depending on what you're going through, like it's just realizing that you can sit with that child and it's gonna be hard. Like I couldn't do it at first. At first I saw anxiety as a threat because it it displays as a threat to me and I saw it as something that it's controlling my life in a negative way and I don't want to feel it and I'm just going to run through life. And guess what? You're going to run out of gas cuz I did. I think I felt it when I was younger. I didn't know how to say I'm struggling with anxiety. I didn't know what anxiety was. It wasn't talked about at home. Mental health wasn't talked about. So how would I know? So now that things have slowed down and now that I had run out of gas, I had to slow down and sit with myself and realize that I have triggers. I realize that I have hurts and realize that I have different traumas that I went through. And that's okay. That doesn't mean it's going to define me, but I do have to allow myself times in my day to sit with it. That's just a little sneak peek of his book, but let me tell you, it's just been such a blessing for me because some days I'll read it and I'll get so much insight, or I'll listen to the podcast and I'll get so much encouragement on how to overcome that moment, and I just remember it. Like I'll remember these things. And yeah, like he's just really big on understanding that we're struggling with alarm, that feeling we feel in our body, and anxiety that is fueled in our mind. The worries is what consumes us. And man, he had an interesting point that I want to share with you guys is that we go into worry in our minds because maybe that's all we knew as a kid. And we thought that when we worry that we are protecting ourselves. But when's the last time when we sat with a worry, it has helped us? Like, when I really thought about it, I'm like, here I am allowing myself to allow the worry to consume me all day. But all I did was sit with the worry, and then I wasn't even present for my day. I wasn't even present with maybe if I hung out with a friend, or I wasn't present when I walked with my dog, or I wasn't present when I watched TV because I'm worrying about the presentation. I'm worrying about the relationship. I'm worrying about these things that I don't know what's going to happen in the future, because no matter how much you think about it, it's not going to change the future. And I think we think worrying will help us to feel more in control. And that's all it is. We want to control the situation. We want to control the uncertainty. But all worrying does is rob you from the present moment. And the more I understood that, the more I'm like, okay, we just going to let that worry be. I had an episode about intrusive thoughts and negative thoughts. We just gonna let it flow like the water's flowing in the ocean. And I'm gonna be in this present moment. I'm gonna live in today because I can't worry about tomorrow. And that is perfect because that's gonna tie us into our scripture verses. So yes, I really recommend that book. It has been I'm almost done. I think I have like 40 pages left, but like it has been helpful, and it's gonna be a tool that I keep with me that I'm gonna go back to. Like there's parts that I have highlighted. There's parts that I have like put a bookmark in so that I can go back because I know those specific areas I struggle in. But very, very, very helpful. Okay, scriptures. Scriptures. So I want to end with scriptures because like I said, I'm a believer and God has helped me through all these things. I couldn't do all this stuff on my own strength because when I tell you how I can't even put into words. I had this conversation with my cousin about my breaking moment and my mom, and I just can't even put it into words how it felt. How you just feel like you're the only person in the world. How you just feel like now that you have this diagnosis or this problem, it's going to stop you from being in a relationship. It's going to stop you from your dreams, your visions, the job, the being a mother, being a father. Like you just feel like it's going to consume you to the point where you can't even live the life you hope for. And it took a lot of therapy, a lot of praying, a lot of reaching out to, have um spiritual therapy too with my pastor and stuff, and just realizing that, like, I'm not defined by this, and that, God did say things are going to happen in the world, and but knowing that, he's equipping me, he's with me through this, and he's equipping me with the tools I need to get through it. And now I'm able to help others with it, and it's a blessing. It and some days it doesn't feel like a blessing, some days it feels like a curse because it's heavy, but I'm able to see it differently, and that's because the grace of God, and being able to have hope that I'm gonna get through this, and I'm not alone in this, right? So I want to talk about, so the scripture verse that I want to talk about is, I have two verses. The first verse is Matthew chapter 6, verse 25 through 27, and this is from the NIV version. It says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life?" I mean, mic drop. Boom. I read that and I was like, God, you are so right. Let me stop worrying, because it's so true. Like, God is saying, don't worry about it. Don't worry. He's saying, don't worry about what you eat, what you drink. So meaning he's going to provide. He's going to provide. You're worrying about your finances. He's going to provide. You're worrying about how it's going to work out. He's going to help you and provide for you. He says, look at the birds. And this is something that I actually, when I read this verse, I have been like using it as a symbol to remind me of God's word. Is he says, look at the birds. They do not. You see a bird, they ain't over there worrying in their mind like, "Ooh, how am I going to find a worm today? How am I going to do this?" No, you know what they do? They trust. They trust that they're going to find food that day, but they're not worried about it. They're not storing it away for a whole 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, because what if they don't have enough food? What if? No, they trust that in that moment they're going to find the food, because God provided for them before. Why wouldn't he provide for them again, right? And that's just part of the anxiety, and none of this I say is to minimize your trauma, but it's just to show you that God is with you and he's going to provide for you. And no matter what, I know maybe you ran out of food. I know maybe that relationship really hurt you. I know maybe you reached the goal and then things went left and now you're scared to dream again. I know. I experienced things like that. I experienced the fear and the uncertainty that you do. But we can't live a life where we're just constantly in that state all the time, because how can we show God that we trust him? We have to trust that, you know what, that relationship didn't work, but God's going to provide one. But let me focus on what I can control in this moment. And I know that once things are ready, I'll be ready for another relationship. I know that my finances aren't good, but what can I do right now to help me with my finances? I know that I didn't do that well in school, or I didn't get my degree or whatever, but I'm going to trust that God has another plan for me. I don't know how I'm going to pay the bill at the end of the month, but look at your mind worrying about the end of the month. Yes, you need to be aware of that, because paying bills is important, but if he helped you through it before, why won't he help you through it again? And a lot of just, I think, overcoming anxiety is just trusting that you're going to be okay, that God's got you, trusting that even though that traumatic thing happened to you in the past, you have the tools to get through it this time. You have the tools that will help you get through what's going to come your way. You have the tools to just get through this moment. And we can't be so far ahead. I just love this verse. And God is saying that, obviously God loves animals, but think about it. He made us humans last. He saved the best for last, I think. But so he values birds. He takes care of them. Why wouldn't he take care of you? Are you not more valuable than they? Right? So let's think about that. And next time you worry about something like how you're going to pay that bill, how you're going to eat, how you're going to do this, God's going to provide. Yes, it's still nerve-wracking because you don't know, you don't see it happening at this moment, but be in the moment, be in the present moment and trust him. I also like that it says, can any one of you by worrying add a single hour to your life? Let me tell you guys, that is the verse that made me go, oh my gosh, that is so true. I'm sitting here worrying for 2-3 hours. I'm allowing it to consume me. Guess what? It didn't add nothing to my life. And all it did was rob me of this present moment. It robbed me of the beach time I set aside as I'm worrying about work. Instead of it robbed me of the time I'm spending with my dog, instead of worrying about work or worrying about if I'm gonna how I'm gonna pay for this, or what the future looks like, or if the same thing will happen to me now that happened to me before, or if this and that. Like, it takes you from the moment. It doesn't add anything to you. And that is the one that made me realize that, like, I gotta stop worrying. I have to just trust. I have to just trust that even though I feel this feeling, I know what it is. I can still move through it. And oh, I just wanted to share this too. I was at the beach the other day and I'm looking at the seagulls because I'm looking at the birds. The verse says, what, So I'm remembering the verse and looking at the birds, and there is this bird. I don't think I have seen a seagull missing its like foot. You know how they have they have their little legs and their little feet web. I don't even know. I guess they're like web feet or whatever. There was this bird that landed in front of me, and I'm like, God, wow, because I already knew that I was gonna use these verses. This bird landed in front of me. One in my sandwich for one, and I was like, you can get a piece of the bread when I'm done. But anyway, long story short, this bird just sat there looking at me, and he had one foot missing. I've never seen a seagull with one of them missing. Can you imagine how hard it is probably for him to find food over everyone else? Like, he's got he he is, I guess you would say in like human terms, disabled. But here he is. He's not over here worrying and storing away. Like, he's trusting that he's gonna get provided food. And guess what? He stared at me for a little while. I wasn't done eating because I'm a slow eater. And he flew on to the next person to get some food because he's not worrying about um what he's gonna eat. He's not worrying about these things. Even though, and this is the crazy thing, he has a foot missing. That puts him maybe at a disadvantage to everyone else, but here he is still trusting God. And I'm like, wow, I'm gonna trust God because that speaks volumes. And the last verse I want to share with you is Matthew chapter 6, verse 33 through 34. It says, but seek first, and this is also from the NIV version. It says, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Boom. Don't worry about tomorrow. Anxiety, alarm is the fear of it happening again. It happened to you before. You're fearful. It's valid. I get it. It's valid. And I think you do have to validate yourself because it is valid. It's trauma to you. It's fear to you. You're worried about the future because it did happen, or you're worried because it happened to someone else and you don't want it to happen to you. Whatever the case may be, it's valid to you. But this verse says, worry about today. Today has enough worry. You don't know what's going to happen today. Right now it is 1:21 p.m. I don't know what's going to happen. I got to go drive to work and see clients. I don't know what's going to happen on the road. I don't know what I'm going to hear in session. I don't know. But it has enough worries of its own. Today does. So don't worry about tomorrow. Guess why? Because no matter how much you think about tomorrow, no matter how much you think about it, it's not going to change the situation. No matter how much you think about it, it's not adding, remember the verse? It's not adding an hour to your life, a single hour, a single minute, a single second. All it's doing is robbing you of this moment that you could be grounding yourself, that you could be embracing whatever you're doing. Maybe you're with your kids, maybe you're with your spouse, maybe you're at the beach, maybe you're on vacation, maybe you're in the car. Just be present. In closing, I just want you to know you're not alone. It sucks. It's hard. It's frustrating. But you struggle with anxiety. But anxiety does not control you. It does not control you. You have the tools. Find tools. Do some self-discovery on what helps you. And realize that you can heal it. And healing isn't about, it's not about getting rid of it. And that's what I had to learn. It's not about getting rid of this feeling. It's not about it, because guess what? It happened to me. I can't get rid of the fact that it happened, but I can control the fact that I'm not going to allow it to consume me, and I'm going to develop things so that I can deal with it properly, that I can live with it in a healthy way, right? And it's okay that I went through that. It's okay. I can't change it, But all I can do now is not allow that to consume my life. It's not going to allow me to hide my head down and never go for the promotion and never go for the dreams and never try to get the car, never try to be in a relationship again, right? That's when we don't want it to consume us, but we can live through it. I'm a living testimony you can live through it. And guess what? Some days it's good, some days it's bad. Yesterday was terrible. It's probably like at an 8 out of a 10. It was bad. But today's a 3. But guess what? We're gonna get through it together, guys. It's gonna get better. And if you're struggling, I just want you to know that your life still matters, because I know sometimes we get to that point where it's like, why does it matter anymore? It matters because you never know what your testimony will do. You never know what God has for you, because your life matters. It matters. It matters. It matters. Your struggles, it hurts, I know, and you want to give up sometimes, but God's got a plan for you, and there's things out there to help you. Please don't give up. And if you ever need to talk or just encouragement, I have a Instagram page, the Breaking Moment Podcast. Send me a DM, send me something if you need an encouraging word, or if you, sometimes I just post inspirational things, or if you just need to listen to another episode of this that'll help, that helps you, please do. Just don't give up. You're gonna get through it. And that's it, guys. I hope you have a good rest of your day. I hope you have a good rest of your week. And I hope that you're doing well. I do. I love you all. And God loves you all. And I will talk to you guys again very soon. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Breaking Moment Podcast. If this information was helpful, please share it with others. And if you enjoy listening, subscribe to the podcast so you can get the latest episodes. You can listen to the Breaking Moment Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast.